these ship accidents were caught on camera. On the water, just like on land, it's important to follow the rules of navigation. Sometimes mistakes can lead to irreversible consequences. Today, I'm going to show you the biggest ship collisions that were caught on camera. Enjoy the show. A collision between a military and a civilian vessel. Collision of the American Navy destroyer USS John S. McCain's accident with the Liberian tanker Alnic, MC, off the coast of Singapore and Malaysia was indeed the result of a series of mistakes and shortcomings in the crew's work. The incident occurred on August 21, 2017. Attracted widespread attention and had serious consequences. The Alnic, MC, tanker, which was carrying chemical and fuel products, crashed into the American warship, causing significant damage. The crew's living quarters were flooded, the engine rooms were affected, and the communication system was compromised. The American ship was reported to have lost control just before the collision. The question of why the crew didn't use the backup steering system remains unanswered. U.S. Navy officials officially stated that the causes of the accident were crew fatigue, communication issues, and high traffic density in this region. Another collision. This time, the USS Fitzgerald, an American Navy destroyer, collided with the container ship ACX Crystal on June 17, 2017. And it became one of the most talked about maritime disasters in recent years. Both vessels were equipped with modern navigation systems designed to prevent such incidents. But the tragedy still happened. The disaster unfolded in one of the busiest maritime areas in the world, not far from Tokyo. The ships were about 3 miles apart. What is usually considered a safe distance. Nevertheless, within a few minutes, an accident occurred that resulted in the deaths of 7 American sailors and significant damage to the destroyer. The investigation revealed that the crew's error played a crucial role in the incident. 2 senior officers and a high-ranking sailor were relieved of duty and charged with negligence. In the end, the owners of the Philippine cargo ship agreed to pay the U.S. Navy a compensation of $27 million. A head-on collision in the Wellington Channel. A rare head-on collision between ships has occurred in the Welsh Canal. Usually, ships pass through here, side by side, but this time 2 bulk carriers, each weighing 20 million pounds. They couldn't avoid the impact and crashed into each other with a loud bang. Later, the Transportation Commission determined that the accident happened due to poor speed selection and a lack of coordination between the captains. Captains of such large vessels are well acquainted with dramatic situations. An unfortunate encounter between a bulk carrier and a fishing vessel. On February 29, 2020, a collision between 2 vessels occurred in the port of Adelaide, South Australia, at around 4:38 p.m. local time. In the dark but with good visibility, the fishing vessel St. Grouper, entering the port, collided with the bulk carrier Acolyte 2 that was leaving the port. The incident occurred near the entrance to the port channel, shortly after the Acolyte 2 had left its boundaries. The collision caused serious damage to the hull of the St. Grouper and minor damage to the Acolyte 2. There were no injuries among the crew members of either vessel. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau concluded that either vessel used all available means of observation before the collision. Therefore, neither vessel was aware of the collision threat posed by the other ship. Until the very last moment, when it was already impossible to prevent the accident. The crew of the Acolyte 2 didn't fully assess the situation on the water and the possibility of a collision outside the port channel. Before leaving it, Captain St. Grouper first spotted Acolyte 2 while it was still in the channel. So, he didn't know that the bulk carrier had already left the channel and that their paths were crossing. After the incident, a transponder for the automatic identification system was installed on the St. Grouper. The management company Inca Ships, which owns the Acolyte 2, conducted a navigation audit of the vessel and proposed a number of improvements in resource management. On the bridge, An incident in the Suez Canal. Navigational errors led to a collision between two large container ships in the Suez Canal. The ships, both German and Singaporean flagged, are each approximately 984 feet long. Couldn't safely navigate through the narrow waterway. Despite the fact that the collision happened slowly, no one was injured. However, there was significant material damage. Dents formed on the hulls of the ships, and 4 containers fell into the water. A collision of military ships in the Persian Gulf. 2 British Royal Navy warships collided in the port of Bahrain in the Persian Gulf. As a result of a strong impact, the mine countermeasure vessel sustained significant damage. Its hull, made of reinforced fiberglass, was seriously damaged and sustained a large breach. Collision of vessels in the Baltic Sea. The Russian small anti-submarine ship Kazanets collided with a foreign refrigerated vessel in the Baltic Sea under limited visibility conditions. The ship sustained a breach in its hull above the waterline. Early in the morning on September 23, in 2020, while navigating through the Baltic Strait zone in poor visibility, the small anti-submarine ship of the Baltic Fleet, Kazanets, collided with the refrigerated vessel Ice Rose. As a result of the incident, none of the crew members on the Russian ship were injured. Kazanets collided with the refrigerated vessel Ice Rose. As a result of the incident, none of the crew of the Russian ship were injured. Representatives of the Baltic Fleet emphasized that a breach was recorded on the hull of the Kazanets above the waterline. According to the Equisys system, the vessel Ice Rose is operated by the Swiss company Maestro Ships SA and sails under the flag of the Marshall Islands. Collision of 2 cruise ships off the coast of Mexico. On December 20, 2019, 2 cruise ships collided in the port of the Mexican island of Cozumel while maneuvering to dock. The incident occurred when the Glory cruise ship, owned by Carnival, collided head-on with another liner from the same company. At the time of the collision, there were over 15,000 people on one of the liners. Meanwhile, the second ship had over 4,500 passengers and crew members on board. As a result of the collision, 1 person sustained minor injuries during the evacuation from the dining hall. Experts assessed the damage caused to both liners, but no issues threatening their buoyancy were found. According to the company's information, the Glory liner can accommodate up to 2,980 passengers and 1,150 crew members, while the second liner is designed for about 3,000 people. Incidents off the coast of Japan. On May 26, 2019, in the waters of the Pacific Ocean, not far from the eastern coast of Japan, 2 Japanese cargo ships collided, resulting in one of them sinking. The incident happened around 2 in the morning local time, about 7.5 miles from the city of Inabasaki, in Chiba Prefecture. There were 5 crew members on board the sunken vessel, and one of them managed to escape. 2 more sailors were found dead inside the hull of the ship. 2 crew members were reported missing. Later, divers found the body of another sailor. Coast Guard representatives reported that there was thick night fog in the area at the time of the collision. They couldn't agree on the Atlantic Ocean. In February 2010, 2 strategic nuclear submarines collided in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, equipped with ballistic missiles carrying nuclear warheads. These were NATO submarines, the British Vanguard and the French Triomphant. At the time of the accident, each of the submarines had 250 crew members on board and 16 intercontinental ballistic missiles. Both submarines sustained serious damage. The Brits had to tow their boat to one of the Scottish ports, while the French sailors were able to make it back to Brest on their own. The only possible explanation for this accident is that when submarines dive underwater, they lose a significant part of their ability to navigate spatially, and they mainly rely on sound information. Nevertheless, despite weighing millions of pounds and their impressive size, these submarines can reach speeds of up to 30 knots, or more, which is about 37 to 46 miles per hour. The crew members, the acoustics, are keeping an eye on the surroundings, continuously monitoring the situation outside using headphones and screens. The Danya Pa caught fire on the water. In 1987, the Philippine ferry, Danya Pa, collided at full speed with a tanker, Vector, which was carrying gasoline and other petroleum products. The disaster happened late in the evening, when most of the passengers were already asleep. The investigation revealed that the tragedy was caused by the negligence of the crews of both vessels. It was found that the ships lacked the necessary navigation equipment. Official reports stated that there were 1,553 people on board the ferry, 1,493 passengers and 60 crew members. However, the actual number was significantly higher. Years later, a commission reported 4,341 people were on the ferry during the disaster. Passenger, only 24 people managed to survive. Compensations to the families of the deceased were paid out in 2018. A major submarine collision. A major accident involving submarines occurred in 1969. In 1969, in St. Petersburg, when the American nuclear submarine Gato collided with the Soviet K-19, conducting training exercises at the Northern Range. Before the collision, the Soviet submariners had no idea that an American submarine was nearby. The crew of the Soviet submarine was having breakfast when they felt a strong impact on the hull of the submarine, moving at a speed of 6 knots. As a result, the submarine began to rapidly dive to the depths. The ship was only saved thanks to the quick and decisive actions of Captain Lebedko, who ordered the turbines to be started and to go full speed ahead. Later on, significant dents were found on the hull of the submarine at the base. And it was only many years later that it became known who was responsible for these damages. The Mont Blanc exploded in the harbor. On November 25, 1917, in New York, about 5.5 million pounds of explosives were loaded onto the French ship Mont Blanc, destined for shipment to Bordeaux. The Canadian city of Halifax was an intermediate stop on the route, destined for shipment to Bordeaux. The Canadian city of Halifax was an intermediate stop on the route. As it was entering the harbor, the loaded ship collided with the Norwegian steamer Imo. A fire broke out on the Mont Blanc immediately. The crew managed to quickly abandon the ship. The burning ship caught the attention of the residents of Halifax, who started gathering on the waterfront. The loaded ship filled with explosives exploded, killing around 2,000 people. Another roughly the same number of people are considered missing. Thousands of locals were seriously injured. The entire northern part of Halifax was destroyed. Failed military exercises. In the beginning, 1990s, in the territorial waters of Russia near Kildin Island in the Barents Sea, exercises were being conducted by the Northern Fleet, which was closely monitored by the American nuclear submarine Baton Rouge. The main interest of the Americans was drawn to the Russian submarine Crab, which played an important role in a new project for building a series of submarines. The American sub was circling near that submarine. At one point, the acoustics on the Baton Rouge lost a signal, and they stopped tracking the location of the Crab, so they decided to rise to periscope depth. However, it turned out that they were right above the Russian submarine, which had made a similar maneuver. The Crab was designed for operation in cold northern waters under thick ice, so its sturdy titanium hull actually destroyed the American submarine. The only saving grace for the latter was the low speed of the Crab. The Russian submarine sustained almost no damage, while the American sub was practically obliterated. The only saving grace for the latter was the low speed of the Crab. The Russian submarine sustained almost no damage, while the American sub was practically obliterated. Disaster on the St. Lawrence River, Canada. On May 28, 1914, the Canadian liner Empress of Ireland set sail from the port of Quebec to Liverpool. There were 1,557 passengers and 420 crew members on board, as well as a sufficient amount of life-saving equipment. Designed for everyone, considering the lessons from the Titanic disaster. On the night of May 29, As the ship was approaching the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, the lights of an oncoming vessel appeared ahead. It was the Norwegian steamer Storstad, heading to Montreal with a cargo of coal. Captain of the Empress, Henry Kendall, gave the order to turn the wheel to the right to pass the Norwegian ship on their port sides. Meanwhile, a thick cloud of fog began to roll in. Visibility dropped significantly, and the positions of the ships were now determined only by sound signals. Suddenly, Storstad appeared from the mist. To the right of the liner, Kendall immediately ordered the rudder to turn left and increase engine speed, but it was too late. The reinforced ice-capable bow of the Storstad rammed into the hull of the Canadian steamer, as if slicing through a tin can. Cold water began to rush in through the gaping hole. The liner tilted to the starboard side, and the open ventilation hatches on the lower deck filled with water. Cold water started pouring in through the gaping hole. The liner tilted to the starboard side, and the open ventilation hatches on the lower deck filled with water. Many passengers and crew members who were below deck drowned within the first minute after the collision. 17 minutes after the impact, the liner was completely submerged. Despite the team's clear actions, the crew managed to launch the vessel. Only 6 lifeboats, 2 of which capsized due to the wave caused by the explosion of steam boilers. Those who survived were doomed to a painful death. In the cold waters of the bay, where the temperature was only 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of the survivors were picked up by lifeboats from the Storstad. When the mail packet boat Lady Evelyn arrived at the scene of the tragedy, a quarter of an hour later, her crew managed to rescue only 7 survivors, including Captain Kendall. In total, 485 people were rescued. Collisions between sea vessels often occur due to crew errors, excluding pure chance and unfavorable meteorological factors. Such incidents often end in major disasters, resulting in significant loss of life and destruction. Well, friends, I want to make you an interesting offer. You have a unique opportunity to become part of our team. If you have video editing skills, you can voice videos in Russian, English, and other languages. Or you can write interesting scripts. We would be happy to work with you. Write to us in our Telegram bot. The link is in the description. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching.